And I should have all this here. We do. See all that? Very nice. Cool. All right. Very good. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is good to see you. My name is Shane. I'm here live on the Firebrand project and at on the Banner and Backbone Media network. So I'm happy to be here with you guys today to talk about a little bit of global news, a little bit about what's going on all over the world, because there's a lot to cover and some interesting discussions I think we get to have today in particular. It is always, I find it always deeply ironic when, one person will bring one thing up to me. And then as they, bring it up to me and I'm looking at these other things, how oftentimes these things will coincide with one another in such, dramatic, and not even dramatic, I mean, just like ironic ways, right? And it just goes to show how important it is that we look at these things and that we look at the big picture, and how this is a global world, and so just very interesting things today, and it's definitely going to be this is one of those things where as I'm going through the report, sometimes I'm going through the news and someone asks me something or shares an article with me, and I'm like sitting here thinking like, and then I have 2 pages in my notebook every day. I have the page where I decide what I'm going to write about and what I'm going to push to tomorrow. And then I have the page where I write down all of the questions that I have as I'm putting this report together. And so in that case, there were some very interesting connections, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the analysis at the end. So we got a full show as always, and today we're gonna do a nice little deep dive in the very beginning here, because there was a fantastic analysis done by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the CSIS, one of my favorite places to go and get information around any conflict or geopolitical issue. They're fantastic. So, we're going to start with a nice look into what's going on in Ukraine. And hello to everyone who is joining us now as we're about to get started here in a minute. But I think this is going to be an important look in particular because there's a lot of different narratives, right, that are going on around Ukraine. And I think it's really important that we look at particularly the specifics, what's verifiable, what's the data versus what's the, narrative. So, as Lisa actually does phenomenal work. One of the things that makes me terribly sad is that I just don't really get to read a lot of other people's work because of just the amount of time that it takes me to do what I do on a daily basis with all of the other things that I do. So I have had a chance to read some of Lisa's work. It is top tier. It is good stuff. So with all that said, there's a lot to talk about. So if you're just now joining us or if you're watching the recording, I'm going to tell you guys to do the 2 things I always like to do. Go ahead and drop where you're watching from in the chat, whether that is a country or a state. I've always wanted to get all 50 states. We'll get there one of these days. So go ahead and make sure you drop where you're watching from the chat. If it's your first time watching and you're watching the recording, or if you're here in the chat today, I want you to let me know. So make sure you go ahead and let us know in the comments, or if you're here now, let us know in the chat. and we're happy to have you. So let's get to work. My friends, it is January 28th, 2026. I am reporting to you from the fascist states of America, and the world is on fire. So let's talk about it. Welcome to the Firebrand Report, everybody. You know, we're going to continue to following in particular over the course of this week. Obviously, we have a lot of tension around Iran. I want to get you the latest there, as well as this massive storm that is threatening over half of the United States with critical and lethal weather. We're going to take a deep dive, a nice look into this analysis put out by the Center for Strategic Studies, International Center for Strategic and International Studies. Fantastic work by them, and we're going to get a kind of a better idea of, you know, all the things that are going on in Ukraine and what that could mean for us as well. In general, and what that means for the war as a whole. You know, we're going to pay a little bit of attention to what the United States is doing in Syria. It's largely escaped public attention. It almost escaped mine, but I'm watching. Don't worry, guys, I'm watching. So we're going to start to talk about this and kind of what, especially in the analysis, we're going to talk a little bit more about what these things look like to me and why they might matter. So in the newsletter, there's a lot of there's some pictures and everything. You know, there's just one comment here. And if you're listening to the podcast, or there's a comment here that says you came from Acosta's first year anniversary show. It's crazy, you know. At least Acosta doesn't like say that he's anything other than a commentator. But I remember when Jim Acosta got on here for the first time, and he just overnight had like 50,000 followers or subscribers. And you know, it's interesting. I'm not saying he's not worth the sub. I'm just saying that, like, you know, there's a lot of people who do really good work that don't get really any visibility on this platform. So interesting. But that's all I'm gonna say about that. You can like me, dislike me, whatever, doesn't matter. I'm here to talk to you guys about what's going on in the world. So, you know, good. Celebrate 1 year, bro, but get to work. Make sure you get your ass to work, because a lot of people watch him. So, you know, yeah, he just Well, I appreciate that at least he just comments, right? Like, he doesn't pretend to be a journalist when he's not. You know, so in that case, but I digress. Like, I digress. Let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine. Here we go. A article that was published by the Center for Strategic and International Studies analyzed the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, highlighting significant challenges faced by Russia since its full-scale invasion in February of 2022. Russian forces have suffered approximately 1.2 million casualties, including 325,000 fatalities, making it the highest casualty rate for any major power in a conflict since World War II. Despite claims from President Vladimir Putin of battlefield success, data reveals that Russian forces have advanced at an average rate of 15 to 70 meters a day in most of their prominent offensives, with total territorial gains since early 2024 amounting to less than 1.5% of Ukraine. Additionally, Russia's economy is under severe strain, with a projected growth rate of just 0.6% in 2025, declining manufacturing, and a lack of competitive technology firms, which has led to diminished status as a major global superpower. The analysis further discusses Russia's military strategy, which has shifted to a war of attrition characterized by high casualties and slow advances against well-fortified Ukrainian positions. Let's see here. I lost my spot. Despite innovative tactics involving drones and artillery, Russia's territorial gains have been modest. Only 12% of Ukraine is under its control since the invasion, and the analysis itself emphasizes Russia's economy is struggling, facing labor shortages, high inflation, reliance on foreign trade, particularly with China, which has become a crucial partner in sustaining Russia's war efforts. The authors argue that without increased pressure from the United States and Europe, including sanctions and military support for Ukraine, Russia may continue its costly campaign, resulting in further losses, further casualties on both sides. One, I'm going to give you, that was a pretty good summary. There's a couple graphics in particular parts that I pulled out that I want to share with you as well. But I very highly recommend that you go and read this yourself. If you're interested in understanding really what's going on in Ukraine and really how strong Russia is, go and watch that. Yeah, there's a lot of horrific things happening in Ukraine. There's a lot of horrific things happening all over the world. And so I have to say, it just kills me. I mean, it sucks. It sucks every day that my job is what it is sometimes, because it is sad. It's very sad to see how many people are killed every day, and so just suffering. I mean, the world is really full of suffering sometimes, and I'm glad that at least the people of Ukraine get that visibility. But there's a lot of people who don't. And so I think it's important we also talk about them as well. But yeah, Russia they've really changed their tune. But we're going to talk about a lot of this. So first, this is a synopsis from the actual study itself, or the analysis itself. I'm going to pull what their synopsis was as well. So they talk about there's several main findings here, and I'm going to list them to you. The first is Russian forces have suffered, like we said in our first analysis, 1.2 million casualties. Just to be clear, that's not dead. They clarify this as well, but I'm going to clarify it again. The actual number of dead confirmed is around 325,000. This is by the center, the CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies. There's differing numbers in different places. It's always important to note that, especially when it comes to casualties in conflicts. Certain institutes or certain organizations are going to view certain casualty reports as credible, where others won't. So they're saying 325,000. I've seen upwards of half a million. So I'm not going to give you a definitive answer, but I would agree with at their assessment. I would say probably sits at a strong minimum, for sure. It could be higher. That's my opinion. And no major power, like they said before, has suffered these kind of casualties since the Second World War. Second, Russian forces are advancing remarkably slowly on the battlefield. In Pokrovsk, for example, Russian forces advanced at an average rate of 70 meters per day. That's slower than the most brutal offensive campaigns over the last century, including the notoriously bloody Battle of the Somme during World War I. That's insane. If you're not a history buff, that's crazy. Because in World War I, they were just charging across no man's land and getting shot up by machine guns. I mean, that's an insane statement. They've gained less than 1.5% of Ukrainian territory since the start of 2024. Third, Russia is becoming a second or third-rate economic power. Its economy is showing strains because of the war, though it has not buckled. Russian manufacturing is declining. Consumer demand is weakening. and they're facing a labor crunch. Economic growth has slowed to 0.6 in 2025, and a total of 0 companies in the top 100 list of tech companies are from Russia. So yeah, we're going to talk about Iran today, of course. I like when there's an ongoing conflict. I've done this with Yemen. I've been doing this with Iran. I was doing this with Thailand and Cambodia. If there is an ongoing, active, kinetic threat, I'm going to be talking about it best I can, at least frequently. So usually you're going to get just about every war that I know of. I'll try and cover it. So, another interesting quote here from their report, and these are just little things here. If Ukrainian positions are positively identified, Russian soldiers may be sent forward to attack positions, which are further mapped and then targeted with artillery, FPV drones, and glide bombs. These tactics have led to high fatalities and casualties. Ukrainian forces have also imposed significant costs with their in-depth defense strategy in a war that has largely favored the defender. Ukraine uses trenches, dragon's teeth, mines, and other barriers, along with artillery and drones, to attrit advancing Russian soldiers and vehicle. On the eastern line, for instance, it continues to be saturated with drones. As a result, the vehicle movement is difficult within 15 kilometers of the front line. Infantry soldiers must instead march to their positions for 10 to 15 kilometers. In all of its offensive within the last 2 years, Russia has failed to generate rapid breakthroughs or collapse Ukrainian front line and allow for sweeping territorial gains. Figure 3 illustrates this, and I actually have figure 3 in this article as well. Total, they've basically seized of Ukraine, they've seized the equivalent amount of territory, that of Pennsylvania, which is about 20% of Ukraine. And this is counting things that were already taken in 2014. And then oil revenues are lagging significantly. We talked about their GDP growth, and the IMF is estimated that their growth is going to continue to remain slow at 0.8% in 2026. So there's some graphs here. I want to share them with you because of course, what you can always do is go to the newsletter, and the newsletter will show you these things as well. So the first figure here we have is Russian casualties. So this is the aggregation here. You're looking at February 2022. Why is this not here? I want it to move. There you go. You're looking at February 2022 right here. And let's see if I can zoom in a little bit for you guys. There you go. So up to 2025, this is a very not so great curve, right? You have the early, and this is what you want, your investment account to look like, or like the value of your home. This is not what you want your casualty figures to look like. And just month over month, you're seeing a peak in early 2025. And this is when really, to be honest with you, and this is month over month, this peak here in the number of people who were killed on the front lines, is this trends also with the dramatic uptick in the use of drones. This is an interesting one as well. This is the level of advance for selected combined arms offensives. So you can go all the way back to the 2022, the first advances, Kharkiv. They advanced very quickly in that offensive. The Chinese Farm offensive in Israel, which was in 1973, 5,000. We're now in World War II. You're looking at the Kursk. So this is Kursk when Germany was invading what was once the Soviet Union. Russia's invasion of World War I. And then you get up to these Ukraine war offensives, these most recent ones. And they're looking at daily rates of, this is appalling. I mean, the 15 meters a day in Chasiv Yar, Kupiansk, 23 meters a day, Pokrovsk. Like, It's just nuts. Uh, you know, it's ridiculous. I mean, this is dramatically bad. And they are dying in droves. Are dying in droves for sure. And finally, we have this cool graph here that they provided. Just really helps you visualize their GDP growth. In the invasion, they lost GDP, of course, because the world sanctioned the shit out of them when they invaded Ukraine. And then you've got your wartime economy boosts, right? So they're shifting to a wartime economy. You're going to see some growth. And then as we continue into 2025, that went down as well. So site issues. You guys are having issues seeing things? Is my caps lock on? Sorry. Yes, the North Korean soldiers died a lot, actually. I want to say they lost like a quarter. There was a lot. There was a lot of people who actually died. The North Koreans, there was like reports of like an entire platoon getting wiped out in these operations and stuff. So, you could really see the effects there. Okay. It was a chat thing. Cool. So that's what I have for you guys on Ukraine. I wanted to really give you guys a some insight into that. And I talked to you about a fraction of this analysis. It's a remarkable analysis, and I highly recommend that you go read it if you want to know what's really going on in Ukraine, because that's what we try to do here. I don't want you to listen to like what they say doesn't matter. I say this all the time. What the politician says doesn't matter. We need to look at the verifiable evidence on the ground. What Trump or Putin or even Macron or the Prime Minister of the UK, Starmer, Xi Jinping, don't listen to what they say. Look at what they're doing. And they did a great job in this analysis of doing just that. So I highly recommend you read it. You can find it in the newsletter. And if you're watching this recording, the newsletter is going to be linked just below this recording. So make sure you go and read it there as well. This is an interesting development here. Something that I haven't really, that hasn't been a whole lot of updates here, but I did report on this a while ago that the United States approved a scenario in which the NVIDIA can sell chips to China. However, China had not said whether or not it was going to allow for these chips to be bought by Chinese companies. So we have an update here. China has approved 3 major tech companies, ByteDance, Alibaba, and Tencent, to import over 400,000 NVIDIA H200 artificial intelligence chips, marking a significant shift in the country's stance as it seeks to balance its growing AI demands with the development of its domestic semiconductor industry. This approval comes amidst a backdrop of U.S.-China tensions over technology and trade, as the United States has recently cleared NVIDIA to sell the H200 chips to China. However, the Chinese government is imposing conditions on these approvals, which are still being finalized, and has previously indicated that purchases should only be made when necessary. Reports suggest there may be requirements for companies to bundle foreign chip purchases with domestic alternatives, reflecting Beijing's desire to nurture local production. Despite the approvals, the situation is still complex, and the Chinese tech sector has shown an advanced appetite for these chips, and firms reportedly have been placing orders for over 2 million of these chips, far exceeding NVIDIA's current inventory. The regulatory landscape still very uncertain. And, as these additional companies, whether or not they'll receive approval or not is in the air. The CEO, Jensen Huang, is going to visit China, engage with them, local employees and stakeholders there. But Chinese government officials have told, domestic technology companies in previous meetings, that like they said, I'm reiterating that they should only make these purchases when absolutely necessary. So an interesting thing to note here, however, is that the Chinese government, like I said, is only granting approvals with conditions. which are still being decided upon. And a fifth source that was asked by Reuters in this article said that the licenses were too restrictive and customers were not yet converting the approvals to purchase orders. So basically, it seems that China has kind of said, yeah, sure, go ahead. But they kind of haven't really lifted the existing restrictions, right? So it's kind of like a catch-22 almost. Like, you know, they're saying, yeah, totally. Like we're negotiating with you, but like they're negotiating in a sense where it's just not like, it's not sustainable. If it's not profitable for the business to do it, they're not going to do it. But it also like allows them to say, yeah, well, we're working with you. Like, you know, we're trying. So they haven't really budged on anything. Actually, it seems like they've kind of just tactfully said they're doing it or not. They're allowing for this level of uncertainty, which certainly does create uncertainty for NVIDIA or whatever, because I'm sure they want that money in that business. So as you know, things go on here in the United States, we've been tracking this massive winter storm. I love this comment. It says, China gave Trump the other controller to the console and it's not plugged in. That's a great analogy. That's a fantastic analogy. You know, so we'll see what happens, you know, as this continues here. So a massive let's talk a little bit about this storm in the United States, and I'll get you the latest updates that I have here. A massive winter storm recently swept across the United States, affecting over 36 states, from Texas to New England, and resulting in severe weather conditions, including heavy snowfall, ice accumulation, widespread power outages. There is now at least 50 fatalities and tragic incidents, such as 3 brothers who died in Bonham, Texas, after falling through thin ice. Major travel disruptions have continued, with over 23,000 flight cancellations from Friday through Monday. So that's that's 4 days. And more than 1 million people have lost power, particularly in Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. You have AccuWeather, which is where I went for this information. They have estimated that economic losses from the storm will range between 105 billion and 115 billion. This accounts for damages to homes and businesses, disruptions to commerce, and significant impacts on infrastructure. In addition to the economic toll, the storm has brought record-breaking snowfall, with New York receiving 11.4 inches, marking the largest single day of snowfall since February 2021. Philadelphia at 9.3 inches, surpassing the total snowfall from the previous winter. Wow. So they got, if I'm reading this correctly, my brain didn't process that the first time. However, that means in like 4 days, they've gotten the entirety of their snowfall for last year. That would be nuts. I could be wrong. Maybe I misunderstand that information. The meteorologist at AccuWeather, Alexander Duffus, noted that the severity of the situation by stating that Arctic air settling over the region will limit natural melting, keeping homes cold and prolonging infrastructure strain, with nighttime lows dipping into teens and single digits in some areas. You know, this is this is a polar vortex. If you don't understand what this is, normally the polar vortex stays up in the Arctic. That's what it does. It stays near the poles. However, when you mess with the stability of the global climate by pumping it full of Cheech is here. Cheech, you'll like this. You'll like my analysis for this one. So you know, as you're looking at you know, the forecast and the outlook here, it's that this polar vortex has really jumped ship and is pushing all of this cold air. This is additional, but I was watching one of my other, you know, sources I like for news in regards to that, and they're actually talking about negative wind chill in Florida. In Florida, we're talking about negative wind chill in Florida. So absolutely crazy stuff, guys, in terms of weather, just in the United States. Absolutely all of it is unprecedented entirely. So I have today as well, just so you guys can get a little bit of an understanding, I have a map here from AccuWeather as well. I want to make sure you guys have the best information possible. And so what you can see here is the snow in inches being forecast Saturday through Monday. And this is what we've seen, right? So like a ton of snow in the last 4 days in this area, right? And this is where that polar vortex is, right? So that cold air, it's coming down this way from the north, and then it's basically hitting this atmospheric river, and it's getting all cooled down. Yep, super cold in New York. And this is not the only thing that we're seeing here as well. And earlier in the article, it mentioned as well what we saw earlier was this incredible effect on commerce and trade. And I wanted to give you guys an example of this. And so in Mississippi, hundreds of tractor trailers are stranded on Interstates 22, 55, and the 269 in northern Mississippi. And this has left road coated in ice for 4 days. You have emergency crews trying to assist stranded drivers after multiple accidents and disabled vehicles. As of Wednesday morning, many people remain stuck. The I-55 in particular is very bad. Governor Tate Reeves has signed an executive order. They are now deploying the National Guard. So absolutely, these states are immediately overwhelmed. And of course, I don't want to just tell you about it. I want to make sure that I show you guys. So in the newsletter here, I have a So, we can very clearly see there that, that's millions of dollars on that road, right? What I think is really interesting is how many semis there are. It just really goes to show that like these kind of things, they dramatically affect like weather affects our world. And so, as long as weather is mild and temperate, there's not really a problem. But, our entire globalized system is very vulnerable. And we often don't see, the people in charge take that very seriously. And those trucks aren't moving. Those trucks are your Amazon packages. They are the things that are going to stock your Target or your Walmart or your grocery store. Some of those things are perishable. Some of those things are fragile. All those semi trucks were straight up and down, but I can tell you there's a lot of them that aren't. So, if you're in any of these areas, things are not going to get better. And they're not going to improve at least for another 3 or 4 days. So just account for that as well. That's a great point as well. You can see heavy ice on railroad switches. It's going to affect everything. And we're talking about 36 states, right? So 36 states, that's 36 states. At this point, there's only 14 states that are literally not in a deep freeze right now. That's 36 out of 50 states are probably experiencing a major disruption in their commerce, in their manufacturing, in their general services, all the power lines, all these things. They've from a and I'll talk more about this later, but from a domestic infrastructure management perspective, it's becoming very obvious that our country, and particularly states, these red states, unfortunately, have dramatically failed in taking and creating a scenario that actually is going to last. Right? They just unfortunately, yeah, exactly. Short-term planning and profit-centered decisions. And now we're seeing the cost of, I say this all the time, this is what late-stage capitalism looks like. That's what it is. It's very simple. Yeah, a lot of homes in the South too. You have a lot of trailers or not extremely well built, particularly impoverished areas. Like consider this too. They're not talking about this as much, but pipes are going to burst, especially in a lot of places. Like imagine if it gets to negative degrees in Florida, those pipes are going to explode. If your pipes burst, then you don't have water. If you don't have water and you don't have electricity, right? Like there is going to be some seriously, it's like I've said this before, but this is going to be a natural disaster level event. The World Health Organization, they put out a notice here today in which they have recorded 9 instances of polio in Pakistan this year in 2026. But you can see on this map here, and this is all in the newsletter. So if you want to get a better look at this, you can do that here, but I'll read you just in general. We are seeing that particularly in Africa and the Middle East, these countries, especially as U.S. aid backs off and things like that, you're seeing a resurgence of polio. As it looks like, these efforts to vaccinate this wild polio virus, is still present. So you can go and look at this bulletin as well. That's about what it is. I'm not going to go too much into the details here, but there is still endemic polio going on in these places, as the world struggles amid especially all the tensions in the United States leaving WHO to deal with these issues as they continue to fail to address these things. So in a little bit of news, and for Cheech, I'm gonna say, Cheech, I want you to pay attention to this because Cheech sent me a message this morning. Measles everywhere as well. Measles in Africa too is getting particularly bad. There's actually a massive outbreak in the DRC right now of measles. So the largest oil field in Syria has begun operations in the wake of a United States brokered ceasefire agreement, but tensions remain. So Abu Aicha, a former head of banking security, now oversees the protection of Al Omar, Syria's largest oil field, recently reclaimed by government forces after nearly a decade under Kurdish control. The field, located in Deir ez-Zor province, has been a critical economic asset throughout Syria's war, previously fueling the Islamic State's economy and the Kurdish Autonomous Administration, following January 18th agreement between the SDF commander Mazloum Abdi and the Syrian government. Control of oil and gas fields were returned to the state, marking a significant shift in region's power dynamics. The Al Omar oil field, with recoverable reserves estimated at 520 million barrels, is vital to Syria's economy, generating substantial revenues that have historically supported military and governance structures. Despite the strategic importance of Al Omar, the site faces immense challenges due to extensive damage, with over 90% of its infrastructure destroyed. Engineers estimate that it would take a year to rehabilitate the field fully, depending on available resources in the short term. Production right now is limited to about 14,000 barrels a day, and the field is crucial for reducing oil imports, reviving national production. And the economist Benjamin Feve notes, control over oil fields allows armed actors to capture hundreds of millions of dollars annually and build rival systems of governments. This is highlighting the ongoing significance of oil conflicts. Loss of life in Syria is pretty high. I've talked about it, but they are also experiencing some seriously some very serious humanitarian situations, not unlike what's going on in Ukraine with a cold deep freeze and no access to generators or power. So very much a basically what we're seeing in Ukraine in Syria. So, you know, Raid al-Sadoun, who is an engineer working at the field, he describes the scale of destruction as overwhelming. The field requires rehabilitation from the wells at the source to the destroyed secondary and main stations, all the way to transfer points. Each well needs to be studied individual, and he personally stated that damage is at 90%. He says, we hope to reach more than 30,000 barrels per day from Al Omar alone. But the timeline depends on work, who carries out the work. With foreign companies operating under international standards, it would take at least a year. So some 416 million came from oil, according to nearly 77% of total revenues. These revenues financed the military and public salaries of the SDF, or the Kurdish administration. So you have two factions in Syria. You had the US-backed Kurds, who had an autonomous region within Syria and have been fighting the Syrian government for quite some time. And it allowed them to have 220,000 employees and 85,000 people fighting within under their banners. Yes. Yeah, I'm well aware that Lev is sending generators to Ukraine. I think that's great. And I think people, if you're in a position to financially support over there, that's great. You know, maybe also look into ways you can donate and support people in Syria and Sudan, Kenya, and all over the world. Ukraine, I will say Ukraine is getting a ton of foreign help, whereas a lot of these other conflicts are not. So Syria is not getting any generators. Ukraine is getting a lot of generators. Even Japan is sending Ukraine generators. There's not a whole lot of generators in the world. So what about the people in Syria? Maybe look into how you can donate to Syria. So I'm not saying that Ukraine is not important. I'm going to reiterate this, but Ukraine gets a lot of attention, where in my work, I cover people who suffer, believe it or not, more than the people of Ukraine every day. And those people don't get help. So all people are important. I am part Ukrainian. And I believe in Ukraine. Everyone is like, they're getting a lot of generators right now. So that's my opinion. And also, I know things are tough here in the United States right now too. So if you don't feel like you can send money to Ukraine to buy generators, that's okay. Trust me, the world is on it. The world is on it. Like, this is the global north. And we care about global north things, and we don't give a shit about the global south. But the world is not just Ukraine and America. I think it's important we remember that. I'm not really sure what's going on in that world. So I don't want to speak on it. I know that there's a lot of money moving around for those generators, and me personally, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot going on. It's just not just Ukraine. It's not just Ukraine, guys. But like I said, I care, right? Did I not? I literally talked about Ukraine for 20 minutes today. So I clearly give a shit. So just a disclaimer there, but I'm gonna keep going because I wanted to. This is Cheech sent me something today, and he's like, Shane, why the hell are you talking about this? How does this have anything to do with it? I'll get there, Cheech. I know you're like, what the fuck is Shane talking about? So on January 20th, Damascus announced a renewed ceasefire with the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, the other SDF, signaling a potential end to nearly 14 years of Kurdish autonomy in northeastern Syria, as the Syrian-led government, now led by Ahmed al-Shara, regains significant territory. The shift follows U.S. abandoning support for the SDF, which had relied on Washington as its protector against the Islamic State since its formation in 2015. Recently, the United States has opted to align with the Syrian state instead, reflecting a broader pattern of betrayal towards Kurdish allies, as seen in past conflicts in Iraq and Syria. I have this quote from an analyst for the Middle East Eye, Christopher Phillips, and I think it's, I think it's really well put. So Assad is gone, and Russia, though still retaining bases in Syria, has diminished influence, meaning there are fewer concerns that abandoning the SDF will benefit the U.S.'s rivals. Finally, Shara's offer to serve as Washington's principal partner against the Islamic State in Syria is more attractive than the continued reliance on the SDF. The former is a recognized state actor, while the latter remains a non-state force that a key U.S. ally, Turkey, designates as a terrorist. There's a chance Washington will face backlash, and it does not look good. However, Trump has little concern for such considerations. Very well put. So why am I talking about this? I'll get to it in my analysis, but I'll just keep that in your mind. So we have continuing tensions between the U.S. and Iran, actively ongoing. I was watching the Al Jazeera thread this morning about this. So up to about 1:15, this is what I know. Tensions between the United States and Iran have escalated sharply since January 8th and 9th. Mind you, we have reports from inside Iran on that potentially 30,000 people were killed between those 2 days. I just wanted to point that out. In response, of course, Trump threatened, the contractors. He's saying that they'll pay a big price. We reported the day before yesterday now that the USS Abraham Lincoln strike group is now in the Middle East and is maintaining a vigilant posture toward Iran, the so-called Armada. I trust Al Jazeera for regional reporting. There's no reason not to trust them for regional reporting. In general, they're a solid wire. I don't really mind Al Jazeera because in that case too, like we're not looking at op-eds. We're looking at primary or secondary primary source reporting. But it is true that Al Jazeera is owned by the Qatari government. So that's my personal thing. So the Armada was operating in the Red Sea. We did have things operating in the Red Sea earlier in 2025. That was a anti-Houthi operation, one where we had 2 fighter jets fall off the back of the boat, and we killed over 400 innocent people in strikes in Yemen. The U.S. did that in 2025. So yeah, we're great. We fucking suck. But good wire network. As far as I'm concerned, I can verify that data. The same data coming out of here is the same stuff I'm seeing on Reuters and The Guardian. So in that regard, if I'm not seeing a whole lot of contradiction as well, I would say that's fine. I go to places I trust that I've verified. And if I don't feel something is sufficient, I will find another way to convey that to you. So, we're seeing threats go back and forth. This has continued throughout the day. Marco Rubio has noted that Iran's government is weaker than ever. Trump is continuing to escalate his rhetoric in demanding an end to uranium enrichment and missile development. We talked about yesterday how they're restoring actually a uranium enrichment plant. So things like that are going on. The UN mission of Iran reiterated its openness to dialogue, but has warned of severe retaliation. Iran's armed forces have, quote, their fingers on the trigger to immediately and powerfully respond to any attacks on the country. This is coming from the foreign minister, Syed Abbas Arghi. And they say that they've learned valuable lessons from the 12-day war and that have enabled them to respond even more strongly, rapidly, and profoundly. This was his statement on X. So obviously, don't expect too much. We really just don't know at the time. And again, I'll talk about more of this in my analysis. So I got two more stories today, but before we do that, I want to share this video with you guys as well. I want to preface this with the information that was sent to me previously by Yalda Roshan, who is located in Iran. I saw recently, I went to that website, I was able to verify that. So I'm going to share this video with you. I cannot 100% personally verify the exact contents of this, but I think it's important, and I've trusted her telling us before. And so I do want to share this information, just a disclaimer, because there are certain things going around. I've been looking into this where certain people are claiming that, they're dead in Iran, but they're literally alive. So it's really important that I just put that caveat out there. But I am going to share it because, in the past, we've seen this, and it's really, really important that we talk about, particularly the cost of everything that's going on in Iran. So, there's nothing visible here, but just like full disclosure, the things that they talk about are very horrific. So,
women of Iran, human rights activists, feminists, or just human beings, listen to this one. Here is a harrowing testimony of a woman searching for her detained sister. She was told that imprisoned women are being transferred to other rooms, places where they are subjected to forced surgeries. Their uteruses are removed. Their bodies are violated beyond recognition. Another testimony reports that in some cities, women are raped and buried at night, erased without records or even graves. On January 12th, I went to the forensic medicine office to identify the body of a family member. What I witnessed was unbearable.
This is hard to hear, guys.
The bodies of women with severe
I'm just going to tell you this now. What she's about to say is profoundly horrific. I think people should hear it. But you can read it on the screen if you don't want to hear it directly.
Injuries, women whose ears had been torn, women whose hair had been ripped from their scalps, skin and all. My relative was killed by gunfire, but her body also showed cigarette burns, stab wounds to the chest and abdomen, and signs of prolonged torture. These are not isolated incidents. They are not rumors. They point to serious, systematic violation against human rights. And now, you are witnessing this. You choose the right side of history. We are not numbers. We are human beings. Be my people's voice. Long live Iran.
Absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific. I have absolutely no words for that. The Ayatollah, the people of the Iranian, Republican Guard. I mean, just they're awful. They're awful. I have no words for that other than that. There's no. If a man or a woman, but it's usually men, if a man does something that is so inhumane, lacking any empathy or really regard for human life, they are no longer a man or a woman, because the president of Tanzania is a woman and she's actually a tyrant as well. So it can be either, but it's mostly men. They become a monster, not a human being. Human beings don't senselessly torture, rape, murder, put cigarettes out on women, rip off their scalps and tear their ears, and then shoot them afterward, or maybe take out their uterus. Humans don't do that. Treat a fucking monster like a monster. The world is being dictated by monsters. Men are not leading, monsters. Treat a fucking monster like a monster. Quit giving these people humanity. Don't look at them as a human being. They're not. Child rapists aren't human. They're monsters. Billionaires aren't human. They're monsters. They're monsters. They're not people. Take it or leave it. It's my position. There is a severe drought in Kenya. 2 million people are facing severe food shortage and insecurity due to a extremely dry, rainy season. The driest recorded from October to December 2025, with rainfall measuring only 30 to 60% of the long-term average in many years. This drought has led to increased rates of malnutrition, heightened risk of disease outbreaks, and disrupted access to essential health services. The National Drought Management Authority has identified 10 counties experiencing drought conditions, with 9 in the alert phase and Mandera in the critical alarm phase. The Kenyan government has warned that the drought continues. 2.5 million citizens could be at risk of severe hunger and water scarcity. Neighboring countries such as Somalia, Tanzania, and Uganda are also facing similar issues. This is coming out of the World Health Organization. And this is common across Africa right now. That this trend of environmental catastrophe, famine, and USAID was certainly a big part of dealing with that, but a large part of that as well is also it's not helped by regional instability and this transactional mercantilistic model of basically extraction equals investment. Last but an important thing, we've referenced it, I wanted to confirm it. India and the EU have finalized their deal. The mother of all deals, Donald Trump, would be very jealous because he's a deal man. His deals, they're not this good, because this is a hell of a deal, let me tell you. This has opened the EU with 27 states, particularly in manufacturing, to India. Key provisions include the elimination or reduction of tariffs on 96.6 of traded goods by value. This is potentially doubling EU exports by 2032. European companies are going to save about 4 billion euro in duties, and tariffs on cars are going from 110% to 10 over 5 years. European wines and spirits will be reduced significantly. And the agreement includes a labor and mobility pact and discussions of Indian participation in the EU Horizon Research Program. India has 1.4 billion people. It is one of the largest markets in the world. It's one of the largest economies in the world. And, this is a huge deal, specifically for trade dependencies. Tariffs will be reduced to zero for a vast swath of industrial products: iron, steel, plastics, chemicals, machinery, and pharmaceuticals. So I will go ahead and say that pretty significant things that you want if you want bilateral trade. That's huge, and we will see you later as well, to those who are leaving us in the chat. So here we are. We got to the end here. I'm going over a little bit. I want to give you guys my analysis, particularly when it comes to a couple of these things here. The first thing I said here, we talked about Ukraine earlier. The thing I want you to take away from this analysis that I shared here in the article is that, while Russian attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure have and will continue to create a humanitarian crisis, the analysis echoes what I have observed as well. And it's despite the global picture that Russia is on the verge of defeating Ukraine, it's just not true. It is acting in a manner to inflict maximum damage on Ukraine. This crushing of morale is a traditional tactic for Putin and Russian military doctrine in general. But experience tells us that the people of Ukraine will not back down. Slava Ukraini. And ultimately, the truth is that they are fighting a defensive war in Russia. History shows that attacking Russia in winter is a bad idea, even if you are Russia. And the part of history where we can really point to as well was when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. Russia is increasingly relying on foreign fighters. It has entered into deal with India to try and address labor shortages. Oil revenues are dropping off of a cliff in the last 48 hours. We actually saw several EU and Scandinavian countries announce that they are banning the Russian shadow fleet from operating in the Baltic, which means that you're going to be seeing they're going to be seizing those ships. I've seen the drone footage of bodies littering these tree lines, these trenches and streets, dying in droves for meters of gains. I mean, the Russian military structure in general and the war machine, it appears to be incapable of doing much other than crawling on its hands and knees in eastern Ukraine and conducting a campaign of terror against the people of Ukraine. I have long believed, and I believe this still, that the distinctive advantage for Ukraine is that of being a defender. And that alone will ultimately win them this war. Because without that, and throughout, not through any offensive or decapitation strike will Ukraine win, but through attrition. European support makes this possible. We saw that 90 billion euros was allocated to support Ukraine through 2026 by the EU. And as long as they have funds, they can fight Russia meter by meter until Putin's regime collapses. That's how this is going to go. The issue is more how much suffering need be there in the place. So other news here in regards to this winter storm, like kind of was shared here, you've got at least 50 people dead. I expect that number to climb, and the wild card for me here is those in ICE detention camps in Texas, Mississippi, Tennessee, and these other affected states. Reports are coming out that those being detained are being denied heat, and if this continues, you could see thousands of people die from hypothermia if nothing is done. This is a logistical nightmare. This is a business, commerce nightmare. There is no FEMA, and these states that are still in many cases struggling to clean up from disasters in 2024, sometimes 2024, 2025, sometimes 2024. Without that federal help, they're not going to be able to come back. It's just going to be it's going to be devastating for these states in their local infrastructure. It is an adjacent form of a Holodomor. I agree. And if you don't know what that is, that was the Russian genocide in Ukraine. That's one of the reasons the people of Ukraine have no interest in becoming part of Russia, because they tried to perpetrate a genocide against them and erase their language. People forget about that. Yeah, it's easy to forget about that, huh? So, at the end of the day, I just reaffirm my assessment that this is a natural disaster level event. The USS Abraham Lincoln comes with it a contingent of 70 aircraft. That is more in some cases than entire countries' air forces, along with 3 guided missile destroyers. That represents a significant alpha strike capability. A strike at this scale would probably kill hundreds of innocent people. If the goal is regime change, then this force is likely capable of performing an air campaign, capable of crippling major military installations across the country. You could see potentially as well, you could see potentially as well, like an attempt to decapitate leadership with missile strikes or airstrikes or something of that nature. It's likely that intelligence services like the CIA, military intelligence, and those shared by NATO members with the United States regarding Iran likely indicate the situation is less stable than the regime is suggesting. But regardless, a strike in Iran is regionally unpopular. It would definitely trigger a refugee crisis, and there is no obvious figurehead for who would take control right now if the Ayatollah were removed. The reporting shared with me by Yalda, it suggests, the brutality towards women in particular is immense. Women in particular being tortured before they're killed, absolutely horrific. And it just really shows, we must stop tolerating the sadistic will of cruel men. Syria is particularly interesting. And I have done a little bit of a surface level review, and I am seeing connections between affinity partners, Jared Kushner, and the Saudi PIF. This suggests to me that there is another transactional resource deal underway in Syria. The United States' sudden abandonment of the SDF and the Kurdish territory would be in alignment with, and to align with the new Syrian government indicates a transactional rationale there. Most interesting, you have Tom Barak, a longtime supporter of Trump, closely tied to Kushner and Witkoff. And Kushner, Witkoff, and others is the individual, the ambassador leading the talks. It is also interesting to note that much of the tech being found in Russian drones that comes from America and other Western countries is can be traced to Syrian exports. Very interesting. In particular, a company called Ubiquity that was brought up to me by Cheech. But we've seen, those types of exports actually grow 66% since the beginning of the war in Ukraine and when sanctions went into place. So credit to Cheech for bringing this Ubiquity company thing into my sphere of influence, because I'm actually able to to draw some lines between several events, and it does actually look like there's some sort of transactional situation going on in Syria. So Cheech, I'll send you some more stuff when I get a chance here, but just to put that in your head as well. Cheech is always sending me good stuff. So situation in Africa as well is just bad. Environmental suffering, US aid doesn't exist, and just overall instability on the continent. It acts as an image, really, I think, for the future of our world. If we do not adapt a more collaborative policy in combating climate change or collapse, global health standards, the extraction model that the United States billionaire techno-fascist government is using, the actions of Russia and China, suggests the continent is going to suffer much more before things get any better, I am afraid. The mother of all deals just really signals a very strong framework that we're starting to see as the world begins, particularly the EU, is decoupling from the United States and dependence on US trade. And the new global trade agenda is taking shape with the United States on the fringes, absolutely not at the center. Not too much to say about the whole Chinese chip thing, other than I think that they're kind of just pushing things down the road to see what you can do. And, if the US acts too aggressively, particularly in Iran or some of these other places, we already have more controls coming up in Q2 of 2026 from China, but they've got a whole lot of different things that they could do to hit the American economy that is already on very shaky legs. So, that's kind of my assessment for today, based on everything we covered. There's unfortunately, it's a tough time. It's a tough time in the world. There's not a lot of great things going on. But I will say that it's always nice to know that Russia is getting their asses whooped. And, take that with you throughout the day, that Russia's getting their asses whooped. And Russians getting their asses whooped makes me happy every day. Every day. Because they suck. So fuck Putin, fuck Trump, fuck autocrats and dictators. Fuck them. Fuck these monsters. They're awful. They're everywhere. We need to get rid of them. Topple the dictators. Topple the autocrats. Get rid of this shit. Because there's a fucking key denominator between all of these things, and it's autocracy. It's very simple. You want to get rid of human suffering, you stop autocracy. If you allow autocracy to continue, you will see human suffering. It's very simple. So friends, thank you so much for joining me today. If you're watching on the Banner and Backbone Media Network, thank you for joining us. If you're watching from the Firebrand Project, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to the Firebrand Project. If you're from Banner and Backbone, you haven't seen us before, make sure you subscribe to my Substack, the Firebrand Project. And if you're not subscribed to Banner and Backbone, do that as well. Both important and both very, both doing very important work here as well. And I'm very grateful to be able to share this news with you on Banner and Backbone. If you guys want to support my work directly, of course, please subscribe to the Firebrand Project. Additionally, things are tough right now financially. I really understand. And I never want to ask for money that you don't have. So please don't give me or become a paid subscriber if you don't have it. But, paid subscriptions would really help, especially right now with everything going on and expenses here at home and being able to, pay for things is kind of hard as of late. So any support you can give there as well to help me continue to be doing this would be incredible, and I really appreciate it. And the last thing you can do, if you can't commit to an annual or a recurring subscription, but you want to help out, right here there's a QR code. There's also a link in the newsletter, among other things, as well, you can go and click on that. It'll take you to my Buy Me a Coffee where you can make a one-time donation or sign up for additional subscription options as well. If you're already a paid subscriber, but you want to help out more, you can do that there as well. Thank you all so very, very, very much for joining me today for today's Firebrand report. Of course, the most important thing you can do is take what we talked about today and do the Firebrand thing. Go out there, forge dialogue, burn bright, and take what we talked about today. Take it with you to your community center. Take it with you to church. Take it with you to book club or wherever you might find yourself today. Talk about those things and go subscribe to Cheech. Go subscribe to Cheech. Cheech is awesome. And me and Cheech are going to have to do a little Ukraine show soon because he's the only person I've talked to that knows as much about Ukraine, oddly specific Ukrainian things that I do. So go subscribe to Cheech as well. As always, friends, burn bright, resist, and I'm going to talk to you all later. I'll see you tomorrow, same time.